Morning. I call to order the December 2025 meeting of the Mission Fulfillment Committee of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to those who are joining us via live stream video and those attending in the boardroom here on the Twin Cities campus. Let me also welcome our student representatives for today, Ethan Ellis from the Twin Cities campus and Madison Hillard from the Crookston campus. And Madison's joining us virtually, so welcome to both of you. The first item on our agenda is an update on the Strategic Enrollment Management Initiative. Providing the update is Provost Ritter and Vice President for Strategic Initiative, Ryan Schmiesing. Provost Ritter, would you like to get us started, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson. First presentation for the committee will highlight system-wide strategic enrollment management for the university. Strategic enrollment management is a president's priority initiative focused on aligning and maximizing the success of our 5-campus system by ensuring effective enrollment strategies. This work is essential because we are operating in a time of shifting demands from students, families, and employers, along with national shifts in college-aged population, commonly referred to as the demographic cliff. While a comprehensive review of the university's academic portfolio will accompany this work later, today we are sharing preliminary findings and strategic shifts related to recruitment, admissions, and retention across the system. To tell you more about this work, I am pleased to be joined by Ryan Schmiesing, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to share an update on our work towards a university-wide strategic enrollment management plan. As the provost shared, this work is foundational to our mission and is the first coordinated system-wide strategic enrollment management engagement for the University of Minnesota. The outcomes of this work will show up in several places of the university's strategic roadmap, specifically related to building an online strategy, student success initiatives focused on immersive learning, and our aim to develop stronger partnerships with Minnesota employers, just to name a few. Over the fall semester, our consultants conducted extensive data analysis, held stakeholder interviews, participated in institutional observations for each campus, and engaged broadly with each of the campuses. It's no secret that the college-age population attending higher education is on the decline. While true, it does not mean that we should simply expect there to be lower enrollments. Rather, we should be taking specific action to mitigate the impact on each of our campuses. To do this, the university must intentionally document and communicate the tangible value of its degrees. By highlighting data on graduate success and return on investment, we can reaffirm that a University of Minnesota education remains one of the most powerful pathways to personal and economic advancement. I want to highlight each of the 5 campuses and some very high-level findings from our work to date. Our Crookston campus boasts deep faculty, student engagement, and a strong community-oriented learning environment. For those at the summer meeting, you heard about and saw the strong alignment with workforce needs in agriculture, technology, and rural business. At the same time, there are opportunities to further capitalize on these strengths, including expanding marketing and recruitment infrastructure and strengthening the use of analytics to inform decisions. Differentiating applied learning and career outcomes with clear emphasis on workforce readiness so that it resonates with potential students and families. And finally, opportunities to enhance transfer articulation and streamline credit evaluation to smooth the process and remove potential barriers. I'll mention, as we work through each of these 5 campuses, you'll see themes, and then we'll come back to an overall for the university themes that we're seeing. The University of Minnesota Duluth has a strong academic reputation and a vibrant student life. The leaders in place are experienced, and they are creating an increasingly data-informed enrollment culture. The distinctive programs in engineering, environmental sciences, and businesses strongly support regional industries. Again, with a strong academic reputation and engaged student body, the opportunities to continue strengthening enrollment and admissions are certainly achievable. Duluth should consider expanding geographic recruitment to grow the applicant pool, meaning they should look beyond Minnesota into the Dakotas and more out of state and greater Minnesota. They should strengthen communications that will resonate with families and students to increase yield, and build collaborations internally between academic units and their enrollment management function. University of Minnesota Morris is a recognized public liberal arts institution with deep faculty-student engagement. One can see the interactions and know that faculty are deeply committed to student success, and students respond with their engagement. Building on a strong commitment of student success, the Morris campus must continue with initiatives already underway and enhance existing structures or processes. Morris must continue to refine communications to ensure that the campus is conveying clear outcomes, such as career preparation, adaptability, and leadership skill development. A review and rebalancing of scholarships to increase yield among mid-GPA students, and opportunities exist, again, to strengthen transfer and adult learning pipelines through 2+2 pathways. University of Minnesota Rochester campus is focused on health sciences mission with a close partnership with the Mayo Clinic. They have an innovative student success coach model that integrates academic and career advising, leading to strong student outcomes and career readiness in health-related fields. You've heard at the last board meeting about their innovation in teaching and learning, and we'll hear more about the impact these models have for student success in the coming years. Rochester's opportunities focus on growth, and we've heard a lot about growth at Rochester. They have an opportunity to expand their recruitment and outreach beyond Minnesota and strengthen national brand awareness. They should increase financial aid autonomy and transparency to reduce the melt from admits to yield. And they continue to scale onboarding and family engagement communications. Finally, the Twin Cities campus is Minnesota's flagship research university with state, national, and global impact. It benefits from a strong data and analytics infrastructure that is in guiding enrollment decisions. Work has been underway at the Twin Cities campus, like it has been at all campuses, as they have sought to refine structures, practices, and processes. Further opportunities here on the Twin Cities campus exist to continue enrollment management integration and the development and deployment of unifying messages across all colleges. Modernize pricing and scholarship models to reflect yield and market elasticity, and expand national and international recruitment and yield strategies. The work on the individual campuses is critical to understanding current state and future opportunities that will ultimately frame a university-wide plan. Key elements of this plan will include the opportunities to maximize use of technology, tools, in deploying a comprehensive unified marketing strategy. 5 distinct campuses must be further articulated with emphasis on clarifying each campus's distinct value proposition. We must understand and coordinate financial aid and scholarship strategies across all 5 campuses. We remove existing barriers and smooth processes to ensure transfer and online pathways are available to support access, mobility, and workforce responsiveness. Further explore the aligning academic portfolio planning with enrollment demand and workforce outcomes. And finally, we have opportunities to scale student success and retention models that have proven to improve persistence and graduation outcomes on all of our campuses. Before turning it back over to Provost Ritter, I would share that you'll be seeing more about enrollment planning after the first of the year. We will be coming back to the board with future plans addressing the opportunities that were shared today and that we'll be receiving soon, and in response to the more comprehensive reviews and recommendations from our consultants that are due in this week. Provost Ritter.
Thank you. So Chair Johnson, we also wanted to highlight a few examples of early change that are already demonstrating positive momentum with the work that we're doing on the Twin Cities campus. So I was fortunate to arrive about a year after our new Vice Provost for Enrollment Management, Greg Sneed, and he's really been building a more strategic, more data-driven approach to enrollment, and it's showing early results. Among other things, we've shifted our recruitment infrastructure. We've invested in a new staffing model with more specific efforts to help recruit national students outside of the immediate area, as well as international students. We're also modernizing our marketing efforts. We used to contract this out. We've brought it back in. That's making a considerable difference. In the last 2 years, we're only about halfway into the cycle this year, so we don't know fully yet, but the signs are quite positive. Last year, our application, particularly in a couple of the categories that we're looking at, went up. This year, so far, our applications are up about 20% over last year, with real growth, especially in the broader national pool and the international pool, which is also good news because we've got some challenges at the graduate level in enrollment, which I can talk about if people would like. And the last thing I'll say is we started the year by having meetings with each of the schools and colleges and their enrollment and student success teams, and began talking to them about what are your goals in this area, where are there opportunities, are there constraints, and how can we help you to address those? And just helping to orient the leadership teams in the schools and colleges to be much more intentional in their enrollment strategy is having payoffs, positive payoffs as well. And with that, we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. And before we take questions from the Regents, I think President Cunningham has a comment.
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in with much thanks to Provost Ritter and to Vice President Schmiesing to take the board up just a level, because some of you weren't here, I think, at the July meeting. So, this has been a board priority since I got here, to begin to start to have a system-wide, university-wide enrollment planning strategy. It's something, as we led into strategic planning, that we wound up kicking off in January of last year, and brought in some good advisors to help us think about that. So for those of you, again, that weren't here in July, so with that, we've taken a concerted new approach to a deep dive with our advisors across each of the 5 campuses, as well as for what we could do as a system. And although we have a university, as we have a university system, we have not had coordinated efforts or any deep attempts to optimize the system kind of component, as well as what we could do at each of the campuses. And so with that, and I know we touched on this more in July, and so we didn't have it in the presentation, but there were deep dives on each of those campuses, for which each of those campuses we are getting feedback on recommendations as they're coming up, as well as overview of recommendations at the university-wide level. And with that, you're beginning to see the preliminary recommendations for those coming up. The next timing for the board is we're still getting those continue to come in, and from that we'll come up with next what we think we should take action on from that, and we'll be bringing that back to the board at a multitude of different opportunities over the year, both by campus and then as a system. So that's just kind of the high level view. The other comments here are this certainly is part of our strategic planning, as mentioned in a couple of different places. And I really want to commend both the provost and the chancellors for really, as we just take a modernized approach to addressing enrollment. And this is an area where even minor adjustments in that modern approach are really beginning to pay off tremendously in a wide variety of ways. I also want people to hear here, as we are focused on the goals in different demographic areas that are noted, that we maintain our commitment to our in-state population substantially. We're not looking to change that component, but we have areas of opportunity in the other areas as well, and that's when we talk about national, international recruiting. That is not planned to be at the expense of our solid commitment to our in-state students, which is obviously a priority for us as a public institution. With that, I'd be happy to turn it over.
Thank you, President Cunningham. I just have a few questions. So the demographic cliff, we've gone off the demographic cliff, and so are we permanently down on the ground, and can you just elaborate on, I know there was a low birth rate starting around 2009 and then continuing on for, I think, 6 years after that. And then now so I think all universities and colleges have this same problem. So we have to have this, a focus on this. We greatly appreciate. And thank you for your presentation. But could you just tell us if this is the new normal, we're just going to constantly have a low number of students to compete against other universities for?
Chair Johnson, I'll start, and I know the provost will weigh in here as well. I don't have the data in front of me. We are at a new normal and still trying to find what that smooth path is. The college going rate percentage will go down slightly again over the next couple years to about, I think in Minnesota, 58%. And we were at a high in the 80s probably 15 years ago. So that number continues to go down. There are less college-going students, and that's what we're faced with. So then that does, in fact, increase the competition that you mentioned, and I know the provost has some other things to add to that.
Yeah, so just a couple of things to add. One is the number of students graduating from high school is going down, right? And this is different regionally around the country. And the Midwest is one of the places where you've seen that decline more. We actually, in Minnesota, have done better than some of the other states in the Midwest. But as Ryan said, the other part of that is the number of students who graduate from high school who then want to go to college continues to trend down, right? So this is one of the reasons why a more national strategy is really critical for us. There are parts of the country where that college-going population is still rising, and we need to be doing more in those spaces. The other piece of it is the international piece. For much of the last 20 years, a lot of American universities have been enormously successful in recruiting fabulous students from particularly East Asia. And because of many things, that is a challenging space at this point. It affects us, as I suggested earlier, especially at the graduate level right now, where we tend to have, any good university tends to have a higher percentage of international students. But I also think that more specific and targeted recruitment strategies in that space will help us to move that in a positive direction.
Thank you. And then as the workforce seems to be changing right now with, all the innovations we have with artificial intelligence, et cetera, are we at all aiming towards recruiting mid-career folks who need to retool their skills? Is that part of your plan?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as you may recall, one of the goals articulated in Elevate Extraordinary talks about developing a university-wide online hub. So we have lots of efforts already. They're dispersed, if you will, across the campuses, the schools and colleges for continuing education of various kinds, certificates, micro-credentials. We need to organize those in a better way and market them in a better way, make it easier for people who are interested in it.
Chair Johnson, if I could add to that, there's a very significant population across the country that have some time in college, right? So they have some time towards a degree. That number is large, and it's a largely untapped audience and population for many institutions. It's a hard one, but there is an opportunity there for the University of Minnesota to continue to recontact and reengage with individuals who stopped out of Minnesota, University of Minnesota campus, to help them complete their degrees.
Thank you. Regent Bergstrom.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, Provost Ritter, Vice President Smeezing. A question for either one of you. On the 20% piece, we're seeing early results, 20% additional applications, are you at a place in the cycle where you can evaluate those? Is it of a quality that we're used to? And just kind of talk more about that additional 20%, if you would.
So we have 3 admissions deadlines at the undergraduate level, right? We have 2 early admissions deadlines. The second one is December 1st. So the data that we're looking at now has to do with what we know based on that. And then we will have our whole admissions pool a few weeks from now. The preliminary look is quite positive. We are both up, and we are up in quality overall in these pools. So I think, the efforts and the strategies that we've been putting in place for the last couple of years are showing very promising early results.
Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you for the presentation. This is, in 2022, we had 16,362 residents from the graduating class left for out-of-state schools, and we only had 7,235 come in, leaving a net migration of around 9,000 students. And so that's a lot, okay? So I'm just saying, if we export 16,000, we need to import 16,000, right? I mean, that would fill a lot of our campuses up, and so that's a great opportunity. It's also a challenge, but it's a great opportunity, and we have to look at the opportunity. So my question is when we look at the majors of why people are leaving, do we have the right mix? Because when I'm from rural Minnesota, as everybody knows, and really, we need a lot of college graduates. Believe it or not, we're short of lawyers, both county lawyers and city lawyers. I thought that would never come to be, but it is. We're short of systems engineers to engineer our plants, and even bachelor engineers, and people need to get a distant learning degree to get a master's degree. My son had to go to Penn State to get his systems engineering degree because we didn't have a distant learning one here. Tourism. I don't think there's a college in Minnesota that offers a degree in tourism, as far as I know. I think a lot of people go to Wisconsin for that. Small business ownership and development, very, very little. Public administration, we don't offer a Bachelor of Science in public administration. I think we only have a master's. But when you go to a small town, really that's where you need a bachelor's, and then they should be able to get a master's as far as in the future, because we can't afford master degree people to run small towns, right? I mean, so we want to get people at the beginning, and then they graduate up if they're good. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of, my question is this, are we really talking to towns and cities and employers and asking them what they need, and then are we reverse engineering our education to meet the needs of the future? That's my question.
I would ask you to speak about, we have a specific group focused on that workforce matching component as part of our strategic plan. You're going to hear a lot. Everything we're doing at this point is part of the strategic plan. So I'm just thrilled for that, for the work that was done this past year. But can you speak to that, Ryan?
Yeah, Chair Johnson, Regent Hibbs, I'd make a couple comments, and I know the provost probably has some comments about academic portfolios, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're getting at. A couple of things. I think to speak to your first point about the import-export issue, one of the top recommendations that's going to come out for our system-wide is we have got to have a much more robust enrollment marketing strategy on this in the University of Minnesota, because we should not be losing, quite frankly, that many students to other states. End of story. And we should be attracting more in here. So that's number one. We have to have a strong, robust, comprehensive strategic marketing enrollment campaign. The second thing, to President Cunningham's point, in the strategic plan or strategic roadmap, there is the focus on supporting, part of the statement is supporting Minnesota employers, right? And part of that work is going to be making sure that we as an institution fully understand employers of all sizes, ranges, shapes, all across the state, of what are the needs that they have that we are in a position as a university to help meet. That's boots on the ground. That's some retail politics in there, right? When you start getting into small towns and different types of organizations, but that work's going to be done. And then the last thing I would say, and then ask the provost to comment further on it, the part we haven't talked about that we are getting is an academic portfolio review. So our consultants will do that, and part of that will reveal where do we as an institution have opportunities that we can capture market that others aren't. Right? So if it's in tourism, perhaps that's an opportunity. Perhaps there's an opportunity for growth in other areas we're not admitting or recruiting enough students in. But understanding the whole academic portfolio across all 5 campuses is going to be extremely beneficial then to marry that with the work of the focus group and the strategic roadmap.
Ryan, to add to that, I don't believe that work of academic portfolio review across the full system has been done or has been done in recent times.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
What you're talking about is needed, and is something that we're recognizing is needed, and certainly our advisors are strongly recommending that we do.
So I'll just add a couple of notes to that. You've been diligent in calling out that we need to pay more attention to why students are going elsewhere. So I think a deeper analysis of what we know about that is critical. I also agree that thinking about our portfolio both at a local campus level and across the system is an important goal for where we are headed, to be able to maximize those opportunities. And I also want to call out Crookston. I visited there a few weeks ago, and I would say that they are doing an amazing job of really connecting to employers in the area and thinking about what the needs are. I think some of the work that we need to do more centrally is to see if we can't be more agile in how we process and approve new programs.
Just a quick follow-up. I agree with everything everybody said, and I just want to, the marginal cost of bringing one more student onto campus, once you already have the campus, is very low, and we have to look at that. And once we've made the infrastructure expenses and we have all the management in place, it's very low, and and bringing more students in would lower cost to everybody, all the rest of the students. And so we really have to win on this. And then I also think we should really work with M-State on this, because they have a problem with this as well. And maybe there's something that the legislature or somebody can help us with that strategy to bring those dollars back into our state. So, thank you.
Regent Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you for providing us this background. I think for me, as someone who's taught as an adjunct instructor in the Urban Studies Department for 3 consecutive years, the biggest thing is really understanding what is bringing our students to the university, right? What is ultimately the sell that's attracting them to want to stay here, to choose it as a first option. The other piece is also understanding what are the pathways that we're trying to create into graduate education. So we have a ton of 4+1 programs. What are we doing to actually articulate around that? What are we doing to socialize that, but also tell the stories of the benefits? We are in a specific area where there's a workforce challenge, where there's a lot of folks who are pivoting as practitioners and have 20+ years of experience who are now going into entry-level positions, which is causing ultimately our students who are graduating not to be able to have a fulfilled opportunity of workforce gains, right? And so what are we doing to actually have those tough conversations around what is our state data around workforce and what is the national data telling us, right? And also how are we pitching our 4+1 programs as an opportunity to be workforce ready and to have the skills necessary to be competitive, right, for those family sustaining wages. The other piece is around PSEO, right? Post-secondary enrollment as an opportunity to recruit and have high levels of exposure. For me in particular, I went to MNSCU and their system for PSEO, but I still ended up at the University of Minnesota. And so what are we doing to actually think about long distance learning for post-secondary enrollment for our entire statewide system and really make that more of an accessible point, but also how are we working with our partners, similar to what my partner here had shared around how are we working with our other state systems and our private colleges to really think about this as a multi-pronged approach where it's, we gain, you gain, and we're all really creating a stronger pathway and pipeline system. So kind of that 3-point piece, right? The storytelling, how are we attracting these young pupils really early and urgently? How are we gaining that exposure? And then how are we thinking about our already embedded programs in the graduate school levels to really create a 4+1 programming system? And, kudos to the College of Design. They used to have a UX boot camp. It's now a bachelor's degree program for the user experience area, and that's an area that easily connects back to psychology degree programs and other orientations of that. So that's just my piece.
Regent Chair Johnson, if I could say one thing, and the provost may wish to comment on some of the pathway stuff. You essentially, without knowing it, have written part of the university-wide plan. As we get into, I've had the benefit to speak more directly and in depth with our consultants, and it's these types of things that we're going to see in our set of recommendations for the university-wide plan. We cannot underscore the communication and the messaging and the marketing enough. That's really key. And you heard, I think at the last mission fulfillment, this idea of meeting students where they are and helping them better navigate our systems. All of that is part of this. So you essentially wrote part of the university-wide plan with those 3 comments because they're going to be central to it. There's no doubt.
Thank you.
Absolutely right. I'll just make 2 quick comments. One is that CCAPS, our continuing education school, is doing a lot of the work that you've talked about of providing pathways for people who may come from communities where there isn't as strong a tradition of college going, or pathways for returning folks who have some college but didn't complete, for instance. And that's incredibly important work. I think the online parts of that are critically important for people who cannot do residential full-time college experiences as well. And then on your comment about partnerships with MnState, I would point to our School of Nursing, which is leading in the state in creating a collaboration across all of the nursing programs to help address workforce needs.
Chair Johnson.
Oh, President Cunningham.
If I may, thank you so much. On the MnState point, I want people to know also, I had breakfast with Chancellor Olson earlier a week ago, so we're certainly in good communication, and we put out a report every year which is about this thick on all the ways that we collaborate with MnState, and I learned a lot reading it last year. It's a lot more than people might think. And it's a completely complementary system. It is not a competitive system. We need both to be strong in the state, and we are both very committed at the top levels to making that happen through a wide variety of ways. I think just one other point here is, even with the cliff that we have kind of hit here, I'll note all of our campuses are up in enrollment this past year. We have a strong, healthy university system. Some of this work here is about how do we continue to be stronger moving forward, as we know a climate will continue to be competitive. And then the last point here being, you've heard marketing a number of times. How we do enrollment marketing and how we have marketing around our message broadly is something we have spent a lot of work rebuilding this past year. That work is really critical, and when you see and hear that we have focused efforts and resources on communications and marketing, know that is part of enrollment. It is part of all the work we're doing around reputation, and it's critical for this sort of work as we rebuild a national communication strategy, which had been vacated, a state strategy for communications, which had been vacated, and then focused enrollment marketing, which is a specific kind of the marketing that is being rebuilt actively by that shop in conjunction with the campuses. So that's work we're actively doing, but that has taken effort and time and resources, and you'll see that, and this is why.
Thank you. And we just have time for 2 more. Regent Johnson and then Representative Ellis.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. Just a couple things. One's a comment and the other is a question. I did see recently when talking about how people value education, this is a national survey, and it said, is college worth the cost? And only 33% of Americans said it was. So that's unprecedented. I would guess it's probably higher in Minnesota, But anyway, that's kind of a background as we've talked about. And the other is, we have talked about a demographic cliff, but I'm also wondering a bit about a gender rift here. So I would just say, when I went to medical school, a few years ago, only 2.5% of the physicians were women at that time, 15 out of 600, just to give you. So no one's happier than I am that women have had open doors to education now for decades. But there's also an increasing rift. And so a while ago, it was like 55% women, 45. And the latest thing I just saw flash across the news screen yesterday, I looked it up, but it said 60%, 40%. And those are huge differences. And I'm just wondering, have we thought about, are there ways that we can reach out to young men and show them the benefits and the opportunities that a college education can provide?
I'll just make a quick comment on that, which is that our College of Education and Human Development has, in fact, explored why the trends in college going differ by community, differ by gender, and what can be done at both the middle school and early high school level to encourage more students who are underrepresented in college to consider that pathway.
Are we doing anything? So not really formally in our outreach, I guess that's hard. It's hard, how to do that, but.
Yeah, it's really about the kinds of
Cultural,
programs that we do in partnership with K-12 systems.
Thank you. Representative Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Provost Ritter, just a clarifying question on graduate student enrollment. How much of that is being driven, those trends are being driven by master's students versus doctoral students? And then also, just as importantly, if not potentially more importantly, how much of that is being driven by tuition paying graduate students versus funding receiving students?
So I don't have that breakdown because the data is not completely joined. So the data that I have right now is data from the applications that run through the graduate school, and that is PhD applications and some portion of the master's applications. Law school applications, MBA applications, et cetera, are separated, and I have not gotten a recent update on those, so I can't speak to that. The one other thing that I will say, and I also don't know this question about the tuition paying versus not, that grouping is going to be overrepresented by PhD students, and they are not tuition paying. The driver on that dip, I think, has a lot to do with issues facing international students who are applying for various programs, especially PhD programs. We saw a huge decline among applicants from India. And part of this also has to do with recent federal changes in duration of status.
I ask also in part because I do know that a lot of graduate students have reported their programs not so much seeking out new students, so much as being concerned about how they're going to fund their existing students and whether or not they can even bring in future cohorts. And also they're being concerned about the long-term job market for PhDs.
Yes, I think nationally that is a big concern. There's been a decline in many fields of opportunities, certainly within traditional higher education opportunities for PhDs. I think one of the things that we are doing is we are trying to expand our programming around alternative career pathways for PhD students. That work has progressed more, I would say, in some areas than others, but I think it's an important part of what we need to do to bolster those pipelines as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost and Vice President. Our second item is a discussion of programs and initiatives that are preparing students to be engaged, civic-minded citizens. This is the first in a series of topics that will educate the committee about the ways the university is implementing the Elevate Extraordinary 2030 University Strategic Plan. Joining Provost Ritter to present this topic is Vice President for Equity and Diversity, Mercedes Ramirez Fernandez, Professor Emeritus Bill Doherty, and the Duluth Campus Lead for Collaborative Learning to Advance Student Success, Mitra Imad. Provost Ritter, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. So within the roadmap, as we all know, there are 5 strategic imperatives, all of which are intended to create a clear and compelling, please come join us.
Yeah.
All of which are intended to create a clear and compelling framework for what the university represents and where it is going. I'm very excited to share with this committee the first of several presentations that we'll have that highlight each imperative and many of the focus areas that go along with them. I'm particularly excited about this first topic, which is something that is near and dear to my heart and that of my fellow presenters. Next slide, please. So the first strategic imperative charges the university with preparing students to be fully engaged and civically active in our state, nation, and world. More specifically, the first focus area emphasizes that our students must be engaged in a diverse democracy. Next slide, please. So why is this important in 2025? Our state and nation face a series of extraordinary challenges, from rapid technological shifts to increasing social and political polarization. A university's core mission isn't just to transfer knowledge, but to create engaged problem solvers and those who will contribute to their communities. This imperative is our declaration that the University of Minnesota is doubling down on its commitment to the public good. We are transforming the student experience to ensure every graduate is not only career ready, but is also a responsible, active, and knowledgeable citizen and becomes a true asset to their community. Another critical reason for this imperative relates directly to the contemporary environment for higher education. The fact that public skepticism, as we just talked about, regarding the value and relevance of higher education remains a significant challenge. This imperative, I believe, is a powerful answer to that distrust. And I will note that this is an area of personal commitment for me. As many of you know, my previous role before coming here was serving as Vice President for Civic Engagement and Education at Syracuse University, where we offered a variety of programs really focused on developing 4 key civic skills: active listening, inclusive advocacy, critical thinking with particular attention to mis and disinformation, and then how to achieve the common good. So with this in mind, I'm pleased to be joined by a panel of extraordinary professionals with expertise in this area to describe what assets the university is currently deploying to address this imperative and to speak to our future plans to further develop resources and strategies. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Professor Emeritus Dr. Bill Doherty to speak to some of his work in this area.
Good morning. I'm happy to be with you all. I am Emeritus Professor in Family Social Science. I taught marriage and family therapy for 38 years. And people like to ask, how did somebody like me get involved in political polarization, depolarization work? And it happened because right after the 2016 presidential election, I got a call from 2 colleagues of mine, one from New York City, one from South Lebanon, Ohio, who were talking about how people were feeling about that election. Do you all remember that election? It was a mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, mourning in America. In New York City, it was the dawn of a new era. People were celebrating in Ohio. And so they asked me, they decided they wanted to bring together 10 Hillary Clinton voters and 10 Donald Trump voters for 13 hours over a weekend in Ohio to see if they could talk with each other, not just about each other. And I said, that's very brave. What are you thinking of doing with them? And they thought, they didn't know that, but they thought maybe I could figure that out because of my experience working with diverse families, if you will, divergent families. And so I decided to do it. And that was the beginning of the launch of my volunteer effort in an organization called Braver Angels, which has been now around for 9 years, addressing the issue of polarization in the country, which is arguably the central problem we're facing, because we can't deal with any specific issue, including higher education issues, once they get defined as red or blue. Then we just completely divide. And the evidence is really clear that Americans are increasingly disdaining each other when they vote differently. So in my field of marriage and family, we now have much more discomfort with inter-party marriage than with interracial or interfaith marriage. People don't want somebody marrying somebody of the other party. So this is the issue I've been working with as a volunteer with Braver Angels for these years. And so Braver Angels has created a whole series of workshops, some of which we've done already at the University of Minnesota, in which we bring together people who differ from each other and help them listen to each other, as Provost Ritter said, and to express themselves in a way that the other person might hear them. And then a whole series of skills workshops. We have a college debate program, which has not yet come here, which is really taking off around the country, where it's a parliamentary-style debate around important issues, where people learn to engage each other, and in fact, we encourage them, change your mind during it if you like. And we've also been working around with faculty development. And so I'm just thrilled, having been working in this area for 9 years. When I saw the strategic plan, just my heart leapt for joy, because I think that for the sake of the university, for our mission, and also for our trust around our society, we have a Greater Minnesota project, so we've been out around the state, and a lot of folks don't trust the university. They don't trust the university to be a fair broker of political differences. And so what numbers are working on is how can we prepare students to be a member of a politically diverse democracy. And I want to end with just a story of a workshop that I did before COVID with students from the Young Republican Society in the campus and Young Democrats. And so we did what we call red-blue workshop, in which we use structured exercises where we invite them to share what's important to them about politics and also to self-critique their own side. Okay, what are your reservations or concerns about your own side? And we have them in pairs and small groups and lots of exercises. And at the end, we ask people to say, what did you take from this experience? And there was a student who was I think the head at the Young Republicans at that point, said something that I've been quoting all around the country. He said, what I'm taking with me from this is that I'm going to stop assuming that the negative consequences of policies of my fellow student that they hold, that the negative consequences are what they intend to happen. So if you follow me on that, because what happens in our discourse is that if I think your policy is going to lead to more child poverty or more dependence on government, that I think you want that to happen, as opposed to it being an unintended consequence. And so what he was really saying was he was going to stop assuming malicious intent. He was going to stop assuming malicious intent of people who disagreed with him. And so that's part of what we're after, is developing skills and having an attitude where where students will develop the ability to deal with differences and not moralize them in the sense that I think you are a bad person because I see consequences of what you are doing, and I think you intend those consequences. So it's a very exciting opportunity. I think we could be on the cutting edge of the country, so I'm here both as a retired faculty member and also as a co-founder of Braver Angels. We're happy to get involved. Thank you.
Mitra.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, Provost Ritter, and all of the regents. I'm Mitra Imad. I'm a cultural anthropologist at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where I've been for 25 years. And I'm delighted to share with you today a specific element of our campus culture that has fostered my own and many others' sense of belonging at the campus. And that is, I've often been struck by the creative energy and passion that leads to remarkable collaborations that foster a resilient culture of communication along the lines that Bill is speaking of already. Constructive dialogue at UMD is a great example of that. So I want to share with you today some elements of how we've been doing this work at UMD. Our work in constructive dialogue is closely tied to UMD's core values of connection, curiosity, and civic mindedness. Through our core values, we seek to nurture skillful listening, mutual respect, and a vibrant shared commitment to learning. As such, constructive dialogue is not in itself a new concept or initiative at UMD. Connecting academic affairs and student life, however, is one of our superpowers. It's a powerful and conscious element of our campus culture. So I'd like to share with you some recent examples of how these powerful connections support our students to be engaged in a diverse democracy. In all of these examples, the offices of student life, student conduct and conflict resolution, equity and diversity, and UMD Engage have all collaborated together, intuitively and emergently, often out of sheer collegiality, curiosity, and pure enthusiasm. Each of these units also actively collaborate throughout the University of Minnesota system to help create a coherent message and set of expectations for all of our students. Some of our efforts to build our individual and collective capacity to engage in constructive dialogue, particularly this fall, include all housing and residence life RAs were trained in skills for disagreeing better, a collaboration between the Office of Student Conduct and Conflict Resolution with UMD Engage. All small group meetings at our Bulldog Welcome Week at the beginning of the school year included a constructive dialogue element. Student organization leader training reached more than 400 student organization officers who received information and training on free expression and the principles of constructive dialogue as part of their required training to maintain active status with the university. Kirby Student Center staff have had more than 15 different conversations with students and student leaders about free expression, constructive dialogue, and civil discourse as part of our outreach mission and in response to student concerns. And then a Brave and Bold Dialogues module has been included within all 43 sections of UST 1000, our first-year student learning and community module or class. We've also worked on integrating ECHO, Equity Certificate Hosted Online, the Navigating Challenging Conversations and making it an in-person, almost on demand, almost. You'd still have to coordinate with our wonderful Susanna Pelayo-Woodward. But navigating challenging conversations is now something that's reaching all of our educators to develop empathy and active listening skills. This year in particular, my role is to lead. Half of my time is spent on collaborative learning to advance student success, a new initiative that's functioning to knit together and amplify many of these efforts. The first class event was created to respond to harrowing national events on several college campuses, including Charlie Kirk's assassination, and the challenges to academic freedom that are being experienced across the nation. A campus-wide gathering focused on constructive dialogue took place on September 19th and engaged a group of over 50 staff, faculty, and administrators, providing a space for reflection and conversation, as well as an informal feedback opportunity to choose and amplify key campus needs. And then really want to focus too on collaborating with Braver Angels. We did have our first campus debate this fall, and it was pivotal, primarily student-facing, with over 70 people in attendance. The event again included staff, administrators, and faculty, some of whom participated. The primary attendees were students. We clearly have students who want to learn constructive dialogue skills and want to see their campus open to diverse thinking. Some of the feedback we received from students after that event was that one student stated his life was changed as part of engaging in the event, and he's looking forward with much gratitude to another such event. Another student, quote unquote, "These debates are really important to mitigate the effects of social and political polarization, especially on a campus, And I think we should do as many of them as we can. And another student said, my views were changed. So where we're going, we have a core UMD constructive dialogue work group. That core group attended a conference in California, Building Next Gen Leaders, Empowering Students to Navigate a Divided World. From there, we found many new ideas for integrating our work into teaching and learning contexts, especially through the powerful affirmation that higher education campuses are the places where people encounter difference and where people go to figure out how to engage, learn about, and solve contemporary wicked problems, to discover and foster transformations in thinking, and to learn inclusive civic action. Higher education remains a vital space for public thinking. Through this partnership between academic affairs and student life, we'll continue to offer opportunities for all students, staff, and faculty to learn and practice skills related to constructive dialogue. I believe in this partnership because I believe in education as the transformative ground where conflict becomes an opportunity for understanding and growth together as a campus community. Thank you.
Mercedes.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Tad Johnson and Vice Chair Gully and members of the board. I am delighted to be here before all of you this morning and to present some of the aspects of the Bridging Beliefs project. Given the time allotted, for this presentation, I will center my remarks around the work on students, yet this project is created for all members of our university, for students and for staff, and for faculty, very much like Mitra mentioned. The Bridging Beliefs project is a signature project under the campus climate umbrella, and one of its goals is the cultivation and sustainability of a campus culture where people with different backgrounds, identities, and perspectives can learn from one another, challenge one another, and grow together in meaningful ways. The pluralism framework focuses on active engagement, respecting diverse identities and viewpoints, building relationships across differences, and cooperating and collaborating towards a common good. We've heard this as kind of like a theme in our presentation this morning. Interfaith America's mission, as many of you know, is to help leaders build cultures of pluralism that bridge differences and advance shared goals. A culture of pluralism strengthens student belonging, support retention, improves classroom engagement, and foster the leadership skills employers increasingly seek. It positions our institution as a campus, as many campuses, I'll say, capable of navigating polarization with intention and care and integrity. And perhaps most importantly, it helps our students participate constructively in a diverse society. Our office, the Office for Equity and Diversity, has been engaged with essential partners since 2023, with student leaders, staff, and administrators. Actually, this idea came from our own student leaders. How can we engage in better conversations, across dimensions of difference? So I have a couple of quotes from our students that reflect how this approach is shifting the way that they experience their education. In a recent reflective structured dialogue engagement, one student said, "We were able to have a valuable discussion about our values and everybody was heard." Another student noted how the space created for the dialogue facilitated links. It helped build connections between the students by creating a space where we can be vulnerable without fear of judgment. As we know, a sense of belonging is one of the strongest predictors of persistence and success. And moments like this emerge, particularly because of intentional design and skilled facilitation. Students also noticed the structure of the dialogue itself. I liked how everybody had equal time to share, and we took a deep breath between each person. I think this is something that I took to heart, and sometimes, when we're in kind of heated conversation, take a deep breath. These practices help develop deep listening, reflection, and care. The students' takeaways from these dialogues illustrate why this work matters and why it matters tremendously at this time. A student wrote, "I was able to reflect on my own ideas and stories and share others why they mean so much to me and to my identity." Another observed, "Everyone has vastly different stories that always have a small thing in common with each other, and how our words and actions can affect others." These insights on how our students are learning across differences is the kind of learning that prepares students for success in a complex world, in my opinion. These experiences align closely with the perspective articulated by Ibu Patel, who is the founder of Interfaith America, as you all know, who reminded us that communities like ours are not based on the fiction of total agreement across all dimensions of identity, but rather engagement in full awareness that there are areas of both commonality and divergence, and that we are committed to care for one another in recognition of both. We just don't get to, take all the good parts and then ignore the other parts of our humanity. Students have participated in reflective structured dialogues, are finding that this approach is helpful to them personally and professionally, and we hope that this learning continues to unfold beyond their years at the University of Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I appreciate all of you coming forward. And I think this is a great initiative, and I mean, it seems to be what's missing in American society today is a civil discussion of ideas without taking extreme positions. I think Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, just to paraphrase, something like, we're all entitled to our own opinions, but we're not entitled to our own facts. And these days, I mean, when I was growing up, we all got our information from Walter Cronkite, and the most trusted man in America. And now there are hundreds of places where young people and adults are getting their information from. And so getting them to agree on facts, I'm guessing, is a difficult challenge for if you're creating a dialogue. And I'm just wondering, how do you deal with that if you've got people getting information from, sources that may be far left, far right, and sometimes just some people think we live in the post-factual world. So anyway, how do you successfully create a civil dialogue given those circumstances?
I'd like to respond to that, Chair Johnson. In a world where people get their sources of information based on who they trust, and we trust many, many different sources, and we distrust many. What we've learned in Braver Angels is that relationships have to come first. We have to engage each other, even around the idea that we don't trust the same sources of facts. Engage each other in relationships, and then we can look with trust about where we get our facts. So there's a little Braver Angels program called Walk a Mile in My News, okay, where people spend a month accessing each other's news sources and getting together for coffee in between and building a relationship. And then sometimes they say, well, now I understand why you think that way, because that's what I would think. Can we each look critically at where we're getting information, maybe find some neutral sources? So in summary, the relationships have to come first. Because if you start out with, I won't talk to you unless you agree on my version of the facts, nothing happens.
I'd like to respond as well, if that's all right, Regent Johnson. I think that part of what you're highlighting is the conditions under which curiosity can happen. And one of the things we noticed during the Braver Angels event that we held on our campus is the tremendous structure and sense of respect that was offered through that event. So those are two components through which students were able to get curious, essentially, and ask questions and feel a sense of safety around being able to ask questions. So that's something that we're thinking about a lot with regard to teaching and learning environments in the contemporary time, is what are the conditions, what are the things we need to have in place in order for curiosity to come forward and flourish?
If I may, thank you for the question, Chair, and Johnson, and for the responses from my colleagues. I remember being in a conversation with one student that has been participating in these reflective structure dialogues. And what he shared with me was the ability to listen, that we have not engaged in purposeful ways of listening eloquently, and also the power of our words and the words that we use, and to make sure that the words mean the same thing, to each other. So this particular student is an international student, and so English is his third language. So he thought that it was because of being fluent in English and just utilizing the right words. But this matter of reflection and pausing, and perhaps repeating what you think you heard and what that meant, he said that it's being like tremendously transformative for him. I really appreciated, Mitchell, when you said that for one student that his or her or their lives, were have changed, and so it's that transformative, piece that you will keep, with yourself, throughout your life.
Thank you. Regent Verhalen.
Thank you. President Cunningham, did you have, okay. Appreciate the presentation and really the grounding, I think, that all of you and the teams have put into kind of laying the groundwork. The thought of feeling safe and asking questions is something that I myself have found lacking at times. It feels very scary at times to ask things or ask for clarifications or try to understand someone's position when you may not be able to eloquently speak on a topic or don't necessarily understand all of the terms they have used the same way that they've used them. And not only eloquent listening, but also compassionate listening is so important. To look at a situation not always as, well, someone must be trying to do something negative here or say something negative. Maybe they're not using the right words, but they're really trying to understand where you're coming from or don't realize the weight that some of their words have. And I'm really impressed with the thought that's been put into developing these programs to try and create all of those sides of civic dialogue and creating, respectful disagreement and respectful debate and deliberation, because that is how we as a general society get better, is being able to respectfully disagree on things, but sometimes that respectful disagreement still requires that compassion in all of it. And more of a comment than a question, but just wanted to express my thanks as well.
Thank you.
See, we've got Regent Ruth Johnson. Get to you. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'll just add a comment here as well. Thank you for your presentation. It was great. I think strongly that the relational aspect is really important. So I'll just provide a brief commentary on the Interfaith America group. So I actually, Ibu Patel, as you mentioned, was the founder of that. He grew up in Chicago as a Indian background, but Muslim. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and when he came back, he started what was initially the Interfaith Youth Corps. It was all about working with young people back in Chicago, bringing people of all backgrounds together, and very much relational, and that is quite amazing. So, I got to know him, and I was chair of the Spirituality and Healthcare Committee at Mayo at that time, and invited him to come and speak, and he did kind of a grand rounds on this, and we had great dialogue and interaction between people of all different backgrounds. We had a community program that evening with the mayor in Rochester, several hundred people who attended. And then, in the wake of this, their group came back and worked with other groups. Some started in congregations, other areas in the community. But it was very powerful, and kind of on a personal level, when you meet people, you get to know them. They're not this whatever, they're another human being you're know and can be friends with and understand that it's a whole different world. And so this work is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Mohammed, and then Mr. Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you for your robust presentation. I think now more than ever, getting to the space of depolarization is really critical. I think a lot of folks have lost their minds ultimately. And so to the piece of also understanding how can we see what you're all proposing here as an entry point for some of our freshman class across our system, right? I think really getting to folks right when they're entering the university system, but also being able to have the ability to understand what is our past shared histories, and also what are we seeing in our own backyards. I think being able to introduce this just in the classroom setting isn't enough, right? We have to really actually be in the surrounding communities across our campuses and really get that early level of exposure in the communities that you're actually studying in, right? And the communities that you're continuously embarking on this journey with, right? But also maybe going a little bit beyond that, right? Are there some rural communities near some of these cities within a city campuses that we have? And so really being able to have that level of diverse exposure to really be able to understand what does it mean to be a University of Minnesota student, whether you're within in-state, out-of-state, or international, right? It really is that element of having exposure to different experiences and also understanding what are some of the issues of contention that really lie at the belly of everything, right? And so just wanting to acknowledge and note out that this is really great work and wanting to see it go even deeper.
President Cunningham.
If I may respond to that, so thank you, Regent Kosar and Chair Johnson, and for the team. Just to set the context for the board a little bit around as we present some of these things for strategic planning. Provost Schroeder and I almost have these memorized exactly, but as she mentioned, this is imperative 1, goal 1, right? And under that, this is an example of one of what will probably be dozens or hundreds of things that happen underneath this goal area. So this is an example of the kind of work that's happening, and then what happens next in strategic planning is this is not the initiative. What happens next in strategic planning, each campus works towards how they are going to fulfill goal 1. Each school has to come up with plans on how they are going to fulfill goal 1 under imperative 1 and what they're going to be doing in their climate. So we will see lots of work, some work that happens all across campus. For each of these imperatives and goals that you see, what we're presenting here is an exemplar of the kind of direction we're taking. And then we will be working over this year to lay out plans, and probably over all 5 years on then how we actually move the needle on actually having this be a robust as one of the 20 goals we have in strategic plan to really move the needle in the kinds of metrics that we'll talk about tomorrow. So I just want, as we do this and the next one in career preparation, this is a common misperception that we're having across sort of campus, and not that you have a misperception, but I've been correcting everywhere. This is not the thing. This is one exemplar of what I hope will be, and it will take, 50 different kinds of things that all the schools employ in some kind of way or another, and then the campus employees. And I know that there are plans around freshman orientation, et cetera, as well. So just to that's why it's a university-wide strategic plan. It's going to take a lot of things across a lot of places.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Representative Ellis.
Yeah, thank you so much for this work. In my own teaching at the public affairs school, I often try to teach my students to separate politics from policy analysis, and so I very much empathize with your efforts here. This work seems to be really, really great at fostering discussion on more technocratic policy issues, but at a time in which the current political moment and our political leaders have brought deeper moral issues into question, such as the very notion of whose life matters. I wonder how this approach can kind of help people bridge those divides, especially when you have, for example, one party saying that our Somali neighbors and students contribute nothing to society. It seems like this can't quite address those questions.
Was there a question in there?
The question is, how do you use this to address deeper moral issues, especially when the very question of the value of certain students' lives might be a question?
I might take privilege here, if I may, Chair Johnson, and relieve our panelists of that. Again, this is one initiative, and what the goals of this are are how we prepare our students overall to be able to be in dialogue with each other in their communities, to your point, in their future employment, and to get the most out of their education by hearing from different folks, as well as to have that sense of belonging. I think details of these particular initiatives and how they address all of the issues in our society are a little beyond the reach. But this is the type of initiative and a multitude of initiatives which we hope will help students and faculty and staff hear each other better, where the university can truly try to achieve the goal of being a place where there are many things to learn, and we are open and able to hear all of them and then make the decisions that we want to make in our own life. And so I will spare you.
Okay, I'd like to respond.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Because it's a powerful challenge to what we're talking about here. How deep can this go? And so what I want to say is, in the Braver Angels work, we have a methodology for bringing people together. And you don't start with what's the last thing the president said at a press conference, but you start with your fundamental values and concerns about how we do immigration in this country. So values and concerns, and then policy solutions. And so we've done this with abortion, we've done this with many very deep issues. The key is you start with life stories, okay? What are your fundamental values and concerns, and connect them to your life experience. And then you build a set of common values, and then you get to policies. So there are methods, and we all know those, for how you go deep on this, not just technocratic policy issues. So thank you for letting me respond.
Thank you very much. We have time for Regent Wheeler, and then we'll have to move on.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be brief here, but, really appreciate, first of all, that this is part of our strategy, and it's so important. We want to personally support and educate and look to people's personal successes here, but we as a university also want to look at the collective and how can we make the world, more understanding and a better place, for all. So I really appreciate this plank and really appreciate the examples you brought forward. My question is that sometimes the very most important things can't be measured very easily. So what should we look at as a Board of Regents to see that we're, infusing this kind of culture and pieces together? So it looks like I'm looking to Provost Ritter for that answer, so.
So one of the things that you can measure is people's sense of efficacy in participating in conversation on complex issues where the public tends to be polarized. There's a lot of research that shows that this generation of students wants to be able to participate in dialogue on a variety of topics. And speaking a little bit to your point, they're afraid to. And they don't feel like they've got the skill set. So being very intentional, and you can measure it with pre and post surveys and then further out, and you have to kind of scaffold building that skill set over time.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Okay, all right. This is a great panel. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'd like to hear more about it in the days and years ahead. So
For the opportunity.
thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Our next item continues our discussion on the focus areas within Elevate Extraordinary 2030, this time highlighting career preparation and immersive learning as part of the student experience. Let me welcome Vice President for Student Affairs, Calvin Phillips, Executive Director of Career Services Administration, Sarah Nagel-Newberg, and Career Services Coordinator on the Crookston campus, Nan Thurston. Vice President Phillips, would you please start off on this item?
Sure. Chair Johnson and members of the committee, today's presentation will outline where the university currently stands in preparing students to navigate a complex, rapidly evolving job market, economic uncertainty, and a shifting workforce expectation. Our goal on all of our campuses is to build more career-related experiences for students and seamlessly connect them to these opportunities. This work is central to student success as career choices are no longer straightforward, in lifelong career management is now a necessity. Now, more than ever, we must support our students as they transition from college to the world beyond. Next slide. Our new strategic roadmap places students at the center of its first strategic imperative. As an institution, we are committed to ensuring every student has the opportunity to develop a career plan and participate in at least one experiential, immersive, and/or career learning experience during their time of attendance. These experiences may vary based on students' field of study or career interests. Although career preparation operates within a decentralized network of career units across colleges and campuses, Student Affairs on the Twin Cities campus operates a coordinating office, Career Service Administration. This office provides centralized resources and support and ensure consistency and equity across units. Their work in partnership with their peers has contributed to a collaborative culture that strengthens our ability to build resources and expand opportunities for the future. As you mentioned, joining me today is for the presentation is Sarah Newberry, Executive Director of Career Service and Administration, Twin Cities, and Dan Thurston, Career Service Coordinator on Crookston campus. I now turn the presentation over to Sarah Newberry.
Thank you, Vice President Phillips, Chair Johnson, Provost Ritter, and members of the committee. The goals of our presentation mirror the goals of our students. We ask students when they choose their major, how did they make that decision? And two factors rise to the top. Number one, they're looking to prepare for a fulfilling career, and shortly behind that, they're looking to pursue their intellectual curiosities, maybe international ones too. We see these goals as mutually reinforcing. Experiential and immersive learning offers paths to both career preparation and engaging with subjects that inspire them. Today, we'll highlight the foundations already in place and the next steps to help students achieve their aspirations. Thank you. So here we see the 6 early actions that have been identified for this focus area. To simplify this for today, we'll boil these down to 2 fundamental positions that align with those that were identified by our career leaders across the university. Number 1, we must develop experiences to help students prepare for their future. And number 2, we must prepare the students themselves to engage in those experiences. So let's start, we'll speak to both, but we'll start with experience. While there are a variety of experiences that support career preparation, internships have a uniquely powerful impact. National research, as well as our own surveys with employers, highlight the strong impact of internships on career outcomes. To better understand this relationship, our Office of University Data and Institutional Reporting modeled the starting salaries and annual salary growth of students by internship and Pell Grant status over a 10-year period. The analysis yielded 3 primary findings that highlight the critical role of internships in promoting equitable outcomes. So the first key finding is compelling. Pell Grant students who completed an internship on average had a starting salary $4,592 on average, higher than Pell students who did not do an internship. Second, a new critical insight from this work is that internship experience effectively closes the earnings gap that has historically existed between low-income students and their peers at the moment of labor market entry. Specifically, there were no significant differences between starting salary between Pell Grant students and who had an internship and Pell Grant students who did not. Finally, the data shows that for Pell students without an internship, the salary gap persists over the 10-year period. On average, they start lower and they never catch up. This underscores the long-term cost of lost opportunity. So based on these findings, it's clear that if we wish to support social mobility, increasing internship access, especially for our low-income students, is essential to fulfilling this imperative. The good news is that we already have a strong foundation for this work. In recent benchmarking interviews with peer institutions, we learned that we are one of the few that provide common platforms across all our colleges and campuses for job and internship postings, graduate outcomes, and soon an employer tracking system. In addition, our Alumni Association offers a platform that allows alumni to develop project-based experiences for students. This centralized infrastructure gives us powerful data and will help us respond more effectively to student interests. We also know a lot about how to deliver experiential education. In preparing for today, we did an informal survey of our career leaders who were able to identify over 100 internship courses that support students during and after their internships, as well as fieldwork. Many of them are required within our majors. To illustrate how programs like those impact our students, Nan will share an example.
Thank you, Sarah. This is Harsh. He's a software engineering student from the Crookston campus. He looks happy here, but he wasn't always. Last year, after applying to over 50 internships without success, he came to me in career services, feeling very discouraged. His status as an international student created barriers, and with limited professional experience, he found it hard to stand out. So together we worked on his confidence, his story, and his strengths, helping him apply and interview with a clearer purpose. This last summer, a program funded by DEED and administered through the Vidine Center of Rural Development on our campus opened a pathway for him. Because of his preparation, Harsh secured an internship as a web and applications developer for Boozy Brew, a Native American-owned small business where he developed a fully functional e-commerce site. The real strength and success of this internship program lies in its approach, which engages partners to guide students and businesses through the process. The business owner imparts the operational expertise. The faculty mentors provide guidance from their discipline, and career services support workplace readiness, such as communication, feedback, reflection, and the application of learning to future goals. This internship program was a national top 3 finalist for the University Economic Development Association's Award of Excellence. But the outcome that matters most is what happened next and why he's so happy. When Harsh began applying for his second internship this fall, he was fully competitive on his own, right? Today, he is receiving responses, interviews, and opportunities because he has had access to a meaningful experience.
So let's talk about next steps for expanding experiences for students. The task ahead is to create more stories like Harsh's. The university participated in a Strata survey in 2023 to understand the barriers students face in participating in internships. The results revealed 3 key factors. Number 1, lack of opportunities related to students' interests. Number 2, time constraints. And number 3, financial barriers. Let's start by looking at how we can expand the pool of available opportunities. Our employer engagement staff and our various career units do an excellent job connecting students and employers, as evidenced by the 35 career fairs they organize each year. However, many reported in a recent survey that most of their time goes to event planning and fielding employer inquiries, with little time left to build new opportunities. Our decentralized structure, while beneficial in many ways, also makes it difficult for employers to engage with students across colleges, even though 73% of our employers in a recent survey said they would like to. Employers cannot navigate more than 1 or 2 career centers, which results in inequitable access for students across colleges. It also limits our ability to promote experiences that appeal across majors, such as research or business roles. Career Center staff, especially in programs that require internships, see this as a key priority. Requiring an internship is one thing. The hard part is finding enough high-quality opportunities. And when that gap exists, it puts added pressure on our students. The task group's recommendation envisioned a coordinated approach that would provide concierge-style guidance to help employers connect with students across career centers and establish a consistent university presence in key industry groups. Central resources such as templates, webinars, and instructional websites would support employers, especially our small and mid-sized organizations, to develop new opportunities. Ultimately, enhanced employer engagement would not only expand internship capacity, but also grow mentoring, career exploration, job shadowing, and project-based experiences.
The next barrier to address is the time constraints of our students who are very busy. We must find ways to integrate career preparation into activities that they're already doing, rather than adding more to their plates. One way we are already doing this is with our new Work Plus program that embeds career preparation in student employment. Our goal is to make student employment function more like internships. The final barrier is financial. For some students, the experiences most aligned with their goals are at small nonprofits that lack budgets to pay their interns. These organizations often provide great learning environments, but the lack of pay puts them out of reach for many of our students. Even when internships are paid, students who must leave part-time jobs for a 3-month internship face a financial gap when they return and they must search for new employment. So we need to explore avenues to remove these financial barriers. Finally, before moving on, we want to acknowledge that while internships are powerful, they are not the only option. For some students, research, direct healthcare experience, learning abroad, and community-based learning may be better preparation for their goals. As you can see, there is significant opportunity to expand and strengthen student experiences, but there's one more important and essential step. We must also prepare the students to engage in them. And for this, I'll turn it to Nan.
Thank you, Sarah. Once again, we already have a strong foundation in place. Career leaders across all of our campuses met and collaborated to define a shared set of career learning outcomes, which is the essential career curriculum every student should master by graduation. These include, but are not limited by, developing a career plan, building professional relationships, and articulating skills through resumes, personal statements, profiles, and interviews. Reaching a common agreement across all of the career centers was a significant achievement. Our next step is to intentionally weave these outcomes into the student experience from the first year forward. This is already underway in many corners of the university through career courses that incorporate these learning outcomes. For example, all undergraduates in Carlson and all first-year admitted students in the College of Liberal Arts take a course centered in these outcomes. Rochester requires a course that combines broad career exploration and is followed by immersive experiences where they can apply their learning. We also provide tailored programming for international students, students exploring majors, and our large pre-health student population. Individualized support from career coaches complements the embedded career curriculum, ensuring students can apply what they learn in ways that align with their goals. Unfortunately, many students don't fully engage in career planning until circumstances become real enough that they know they need the support. To show what happens when students get early access to career support, I'd like to share a story with another student I worked with. Crookston doesn't offer graduate programs, therefore our undergraduates lead the research activities, giving them full access to faculty-mentored research. Eli's story demonstrates what becomes possible when students engage early in that process. So I met Eli, a natural resources student, while teaching his section of our first-year course, Introduction to University Life. Then Eli reached out to me to hear more about career preparation. Our first meetings focused on finding a campus job. Excellent foundation for the work to teach the fundamentals. He soon found that position as an admissions ambassador. As his confidence grew, he took on more leadership roles, currently serving as a lead community advisor in residential life and vice president of the Natural Resources Club. He returned often to check in, and together with faculty, we shifted the question from what should I do to what could I do? When students understand who they are and what they value, the should becomes clear. As he gained exposure to faculty, alumni, and employers, Eli developed a clear direction. He discovered a growing interest in environmental research, specifically the impact of climate and weather on ecosystems. He told me he realized the importance of getting involved during his second semester as a freshman. And even then, he wished he'd started sooner. His experience shows that when students start career exploration and applied learning early, they don't just prepare for a job. They begin shaping a professional identity long before graduation. So Eli's story is compelling, but it also highlights a challenge. His engagement happened largely by chance. He enrolled in a course I happened to teach, heard the message early, and acted on it. Many students never encounter that moment. What connects the story of Eli and Harsh is not luck. It's intentional career education. Across the country, career staff are grappling with the limitations of the opt-in approach, which often leaves too many students, especially those with the greatest need, reaching graduation only to realize they should have begun earlier. So we advocate moving towards a public health model, one that is systematic, comprehensive, and proactive. We must build an ecosystem that involves faculty, advisors, families, guided by career staff. We cannot accomplish this one student at a time. So how do we make this work? Career Center leaders have identified several promising strategies, including expanding required career services, embedding career content across the curriculum, developing clearer ways to track student progress, and more intentionally connecting career preparation with experiential learning. Alumni will be essential partners. They are eager to help students find and explore professional pathways and connect with meaningful opportunities. Several student populations would benefit from tailored services similar to those we currently provide international students. We seek to extend the successful model to support students with disabilities, veterans, and first-generation students, providing equitable access to preparation and opportunity. The strong foundation we have already built, combined with intentional strategies to expand access, positions the University of Minnesota to become a destination for exemplary career support. We have the opportunity to transform career preparation from a fragmented set of experiences into a seamless part of every student's journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your presentations. When I was directing a program here at the university, I had the benefit of getting a whole bunch of interns from the Humphrey School, and they were a bunch of go-getters, and we managed to get a lot of stuff done. So anyway, I'm sure the Regents have some questions for you. Appreciate your presentation and note the importance of internships and real-world experience. Certainly is a valuable part of a university education. I hope we can build on what you're doing so far, and I appreciate your examples that you gave. So, questions? Regent Hipsch.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. Wow, I really love this. This is great. I mean, you can't beat it. This is what we do. The question I have is, how are you building resiliency and sustainability into this regarding really fast changes with AI and robotics and different things like that? Is that going to be a part of it, or you're hearing more and more layoffs coming of different people, and I think that's going to be
Yeah, thank you, Regent
Yeah.
Hipsch. So we noted the 3 learning outcomes. The first one, to develop a career plan. That's a learning outcome. It's not a task. It's something we want students to learn to do throughout their lives. And so we know, and we've been saying for a long time, the world is changing. It's now changing probably more quickly and more urgently. So part of our task as career professionals is to help students understand the world they're entering and to rely on those fundamental transferable skills. I was really excited to hear the earlier conversation about recareering credentialing, to think a little bit more about how to monitor opportunities that are coming along. And much of our education with students is helping them understand not to take rejection personally, how to keep moving on in those tough situations when it does take a while. So that all of that is incorporated into that idea of career education. And when we teach career courses, that is an important topic that we cover and will become more important. And I think we have to acknowledge that we don't know really what the future is going to hold, but we know that people are going to have to be adaptable and agile.
Regent Lugar.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you so much for the presentation. You mentioned partnering, working with alumni. I'd love to understand, there's so many alumni here at the university who I know are eager to partner. How is that going? What do you see as the benefits and challenges?
We rely a lot on the Maroon and Gold Network as our way to find alumni, and that's another component that is integrated in our career coursework. And if we have a curriculum, that is something that we ask students to do as part of that instruction, is to reach out to some alumni. We use the Maroon and Gold Network. We also use LinkedIn, which is another good way to reach our alumni. And that's generally integrated into assignments. It's also integrated into our career counseling and coaching with students. So we rely on those resources to locate those eager alumni, and we know they're eager. The other piece of it that's really important is coaching the students on how to do that. There's etiquette involved in that, and it's also a little intimidating for them. So helping nudge them a little bit, again, having course assignments that require them to do that is a really good nudge. And so, but also helping them just understand how to send an email properly. All of those details really make a difference when we can lay that out for our students.
Thanks so much. I'm curious, are you partnering with the Alumni Association at a leadership level so that, from that end, they can be prompting alums who are interested and want to assist?
Yeah, I did just recently meet, and we meet fairly regularly, but I do think there's some work ahead, in particular on how do we share information, and that's coming up just a lot related to all of this whole initiative. How are we tracking? How are we sharing information? A lot of exciting initiatives underway that we briefly mentioned, the employer tracking system, a CRM, that will help with that, but we are in different systems. So that is some work ahead, and that is a conversation that we're having.
Regent Mohammed. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, if I may add, and thank you for the wonderful presentation and the work that you're doing. I want to answer your alumni question and then give a higher level thought as well. So concurrently with this, as part of a different imperative, we are working on how we improve our system-wide systemness, so to speak, across the university, how we act sort of as one university on 5 campuses. And with that is the good work that we're doing with Lisa Lewis and the Alumni Association. For starters, how we don't have one alumni association currently, for example. And so how we're doing work as we think about that going forward, and you'll hear more from her over the year, but how that then connects with our students and our careers all across campus. So that's kind of parallel work that's going on that she's doing a really wonderful job on, and how we both strengthen that network across all of our campuses to be interacting, and then how that can participate in this component as well. So that's a separate parallel initiative, and all these boats rise together, and then we wind up with the boat that's very risen. And then the other, just note while I have the floor here, is just how passionate I am, I think, about this initiative, particularly around getting our students real-world experiences. I mean, one, from our founding as a land-grant university, we had a focus on a practical education for the citizens of Minnesota. That does not mean they can't take that practical education and go to grad school and do deep theoretical work that leads to change in the world. So I want to be clear, career preparation also includes future study and graduate work and other components. But it is no longer sufficient for universities to get credentials and to get to a degree. We know our students, in order to be competitive, and these folks will often tell me, and I just want to reinforce what I know you tell me all the time, but I want to use my opportunity to amplify your voice, so thank you. Need 2 and 3 career opportunities like this or interactions in the real world. We know more and more often that a GPA alone will not be the answer, and that our employers are looking for who they interacted with, what those references were. And then one of those builds on another, and your example was really quite beautiful. And then the other part that I'm very passionate about here is those can no longer be differential. Students that are better resourced, have networks, have family networks, have connections, and they have and always will get and find those connections. Our least resourced students, our first generation students, we have to help bridge that gap, and that first slide on the Pell Grant and things like that are really important, and how we think about that and I know the foundation has had some interesting thinking as well. How do we think about a modern scholarship that supports both the education as well as potential career opportunities for students that really need that? And just emphasizing the point that I know Provost Ritter will make is it's internships, but it's also having studied abroad and what you got out of that. And I've heard, as you say, how do you package that then into what is a meaningful experience as you're telling your story as an employer? I'm seeing Regent Bergstrom nod there. Are really important as well, in addition to community engaged opportunities. And for our many students that want to go into nonprofit work, how do we help with the funding for those experiences so that they can then be competitive? So there's a lot of opportunity here. I'll just say briefly, again, I have the floor, which I'll only take for another minute, is this is a strengths-based plan. This is something the University of Minnesota is already very good at. And should be differentiating us from where people are choosing to come to university already, that we're very good at getting these hands-on real-world experiences. We'll talk more about metrics tomorrow, and we have a lot of work to do just to track and measure those metrics. Many of our schools and some of our campuses, every one of our students already gets an experience like this during their time. How do we make that all of our students, and how do we decrease the differential components of it? I think is part of the work of our strategic plan, some of which will be this work and some will be which work that happens in colleges and schools. But it's something we're already very good at and should be a differentiator of why do you want to come to the University of Minnesota? It's because we're really good at helping you do this.
Thank you. Regent Mohammed.
Thank you all. Well, thank you, Chair Johnson, but thank you all for just the work that you've all put into this, but also the approach and really being data informed and the data related to Pell Grant recipients, right? I have an experience in working in workforce development in the past, and so what I'm wondering about how you're engaging employers, particularly in this resource-rich state that we're in, right? Outside of being known as a state for 10,000 plus lakes, it's 10,000 plus Fortune 500s and other folks, right? And so, in social enterprises. So how are we thinking about competitive cost sharing, revenue, or elements of that forte of how do we really become a competitor in that space and attracting these employers to want to hire our students, right? And what capacity do we have to engage philanthropy to really fill the gap in areas that we might be facing constraints? And to the point of President Cunningham around, studying abroad, it's critical, but we're also noting that there are challenges at the federal level in funding some of those resources for our students that are most underrepresented or dealing with economic constraints. So what are the pitches that we're making to folks outside of our ecosystem even, particularly in philanthropy, to really make sure that we're closing some of those gaps if we aren't able to get some of our students to actually be able to study abroad, or we're seeing our employers struggling with the ability to actually, cover a 3-month or a 6-month internship.
So there's a lot there, and I could talk a while here. I'll try to hit the high points. You can tell me if I missed any of that, Regent Kosar. So there are pockets around the university where there have been donors that have left funds that are supporting internships now, and likely other experiences. I'm not as familiar with Learning Abroad, but our micro internships, for example, through the UMAA. But we need to keep building that. But there's a nice template in place for how that's worked. When you think about how much money does it take to offset a student working a minimum wage job over the summer, it's a fairly large grant. If a student is really weighing that out, it's probably $6,000 or $7,000. So we need to do more to build that funding, or at least look more carefully at what really is that point where students can afford to look at those. But there are paths in place and application processes, and we know a lot how to do that. We have to be careful that we don't impact students' financial aid as we're doing that, and be thoughtful about how we're awarding those and ensuring there's some tracking in place for students when we're sending money off to them like that. So that's work ahead to think about how do we expand the funds available, probably beyond the scope of what we already know at this point. How we engage employers, that's handled currently in the colleges, and so there are varying levels of employer engagement support throughout the university. Our count of our freshmen admitting colleges, there's about 16 staff that work on that. As we suggested in the presentation, it would strengthen their work a lot to have some central support for that work, to reduce redundancy, and in particular to have a university presence at key groups, to do better analysis of the gaps between student interests and opportunities, to be more analytical about that. So those are all goals that we are looking to as we move forward. But I want to emphasize our existing staff do a great job and provide a lot of resources, so we have a lot to build on.
Thank you. Provost Ritter.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. First, thank you for the presentations. And I love the emphasis on making sure that first-year students get exposed to career services. Makes a huge difference in their overall success. So especially in terms of students who are coming from less privileged backgrounds versus more. So I'm very excited about that. Wanted to return to a quick comment by Chair Hips on AI, and just note that this is a big priority for the university, that we're doing a lot of work with faculty on thinking about how do we adjust curriculums, how do we teach about appropriate use of AI in our classrooms, et cetera. So that's a good call out. And you also talked about resilience. And the resilience piece, I think, is about not only career success, it's about wellness, it's about mental health. I do think that immersive learning experiences, internships are one of the things that builds resilience, and that's quite important. But thinking more broadly about how we focus with students on how to build that that area of strength as well, I think is critically important. And then finally, on study abroad, I do think that study abroad is incredibly important in terms of broadening the perspectives of our students. It's one of the things that helps to make them engaged global citizens. And the barriers sometimes to students being able to do this, you've certainly identified one, which is funding. There are other barriers as well that we need to be mindful of and help to address for students who may have family obligations, for students who are in ROTC, for students who are athletes, for students who are disabled. So making sure that we look at all of that is part of the approach. And then we have to be encouraging more schools and colleges to not make it optional, but to build it into their curriculum.
Thank you. And with that, we want to thank the panel for this very important presentation and hope to hear more about this in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Next, we will consider the consent report. Provost Ritter, will you summarize the items in today's report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson. So we have three main items in the report today. The first has to do with program changes, both new program approvals and program discontinuations. I will note that the Duluth campus has been doing some really thoughtful, data-informed, very collaborative work on identifying programs that have low enrollment and should be discontinued. So you'll see some of those here, and there will be more coming forward in the future. There's similar work going on in various schools and colleges on the Twin City campus. Overall, I think that is work that we should all be doing all the time. And as you'll see in some of what's articulated here, it's a way that you make room also for new programs that are in demand. The next item is a conferral of tenure on 2 faculty members. And finally, the consent report includes a mandated report on appropriate fund use in the health sciences.
Thank you. Now, before I invite a motion to approve the consent report, you are welcome to ask questions, make comments, or ask for an item to be separated out from the report to be voted on separately. Are there any questions, comments, or requests to separate an item out? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve on behalf of the board the consent report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The motion is approved. Let's see here. And informational items?
Yes, thank you. So 2 informational items for your consideration today. One is I'm pleased to remind you that our regular report of select student, faculty, and staff accomplishments has been included in the docket along with links for those of you who'd like more information. And I'll just call out a couple of these. There are many. I always feel humbled by the achievements of the people in our university community. Among them is that Forbes recognized the University of Minnesota as a best employer for women for the 2nd time and a best employer by state for the 4th year in a row. University is the only higher education institution in Minnesota included on the best employer by state list. Second, the interdisciplinary team of researchers between the College of Vet Med and the med school has recently been awarded a $6.7 million grant. It's actually 2 grants from the NIH, and it's a collaborative effort to study how certain viruses cause severe disease in pregnant individuals and how to develop vaccines against them. And the third example I'll give, and then I'll stop, is the Twin Cities campus students in computer science and mechanical engineering won the 2025 Excellence in Small Farm Technology Award at the Farm Robotics Challenge. That one's especially for you, Chair Adams. This is a national competition for college-level student teams tackling real-world agricultural problems using advanced robotics. The project, titled Farm Guard's Multi-Robot Deer Deterrence System, aims to scare deer away from farms to prevent loss of crops. Other item included in the docket is a mandated report for the legislature describing all fetal tissue research proposals submitted by the university's Fetal Tissue Research Committee, or IRB. Please note that there were no new research requests involving access to donated human fetal tissue submitted in 2025. Chair Johnson, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Provost Ritter. Are there any comments or questions on the informational items? Thank you. There being no additional business before the committee, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
That's great. Really?